It all started on a quiet evening when the world outside my window blurred into shades of grey. I had just returned home from another exhausting day at work, but the weight on my chest felt heavier than usual. My name is Jake Sullivan, and I had always considered myself a faithful husband to my wife, Emily. For 5 years, I had poured my heart and soul into our marriage, but everything shattered the moment I discovered her infidelity. It was a betrayal that left me reeling, grappling with feelings of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. After the initial shock wore off, I found myself at a crossroads. I could confront Emily directly, demanding answers, or I could channel my pain into something creative. I chose the latter. I had always been a fan of storytelling and had dabbled in writing, but now I felt an overwhelming urge to share my experiences in a more public way. That's when I decided to start a podcast under a pseudonym, The Heartbreak Chronicles. With each episode, I shared stories about relationships, infidelity, and betrayal, weaving together tales that eerily mirrored my own life. I chose a fictional narrative style, allowing listeners to engage with the stories on a deeper level. The cathartic release of sharing my thoughts became a lifeline for me, and the podcast quickly gained traction. Listeners resonated with the themes of love lost and the complexities of relationships, unknowingly drawn into the intricate web of my pain. As the episodes unfolded, I noticed that my storytelling became increasingly reflective of my reality. I shared anecdotes about a husband discovering his wife's secret messages, a narrative filled with the raw emotions of betrayal and confusion. The more I narrated, the more I poured my heart into each episode, each tale designed to resonate with others who had faced similar struggles. Emily, my unsuspecting wife, became a silent listener. She had always supported my creative endeavors, and I could only imagine her reaction to my newfound project. As the podcast gained popularity, it also began to seep into our daily conversations. I often noticed her brows furrow as she listened to the episodes, her face a mixture of intrigue and discomfort. One evening, after an episode that paralleled our lives in a particularly haunting way, I returned home to find Emily sitting on the couch, her expression pensive. "Jake, have you been working on something new?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but I could sense the tension in her voice. "Just a podcast," I replied, keeping my tone light. "You should check it out. I think you might find it interesting." She nodded, but the gears in her mind were clearly turning. I watched as she processed the content I had been sharing, the stories echoing the very issues that had caused a rift in our relationship. I had unknowingly drawn her closer to the truth, and I could feel the impending confrontation looming in the air. Weeks passed, and my podcast continued to gain momentum. The stories became darker, more intimate, each episode a reflection of my inner turmoil. I shared tales of heartbreak, betrayal, and the search for redemption. But as I spoke, I noticed a shift in Emily's demeanor. She became increasingly withdrawn, often lost in thought, her gaze distant as she navigated the fragile reality we found ourselves in. Then came the fateful day when everything came to a head. I had planned a live episode, inviting listeners to join in on the conversation. The theme was confronting betrayal, and I felt an electrifying mix of excitement and anxiety as I prepared to share my most personal story, yet the story of my own betrayal. I knew it would resonate deeply, but little did I know it would lead to a confrontation I had been both anticipating and dreading. As the live recording began, I felt the rush of adrenaline. The chat room filled with eager listeners, ready to engage. I introduced the episode, weaving in anecdotes that captured the essence of heartbreak. Sometimes, the people we love the most can hurt us in ways we never expected. I began, my voice steady as I looked at the camera. As I shared my story, I glanced at the chat and noticed comments flooding in. "This hits too close to home," one listener wrote. Another added, "I can relate to this. It's like you're speaking directly to me." The validation was intoxicating, but I felt a twist of guilt in my gut, knowing that my words were a reflection of Emily's choices. Midway through the episode, I noticed a comment from a familiar name, Emily. My heart raced as I read her words. "Jake, are you talking about us?" The room fell silent, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Trying to maintain my composure, I responded, "This is about the complexities of love and betrayal. It's not just about me. It's a universal experience," but inside, I could feel the walls closing in. The tension was palpable as the chat exploded with reactions, some urging her to confront me directly. "You need to speak up," one listener wrote, and I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. Would she truly confront me during this live episode, in front of hundreds of listeners? And then it happened. Emily's voice broke through the chaos of the chat. "Jake, this is not just a story to me. This is our life. You're exposing our private pain to the world." The room was charged with tension as I struggled to maintain my composure. "Emily, I'm sharing a story that reflects the truth of what we've been through," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You need to understand that I'm not just telling this for shock value. I'm sharing it to heal." Her face was a mask of hurt and anger as she spoke again, her words sharp. "But you're not just sharing. You're making me the villain in our story. You're using our pain for entertainment." The chat room erupted, messages flying in from listeners who were captivated by the unfolding drama. "This is wild," one wrote, while another chimed in, "Get it all out in the open." I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Emily, I didn't mean for it to come to this. But I thought you were ready to confront what happened between us," I confessed, the rawness of the situation washing over me. Tears welled in her eyes, and I could see the heartbreak etched on her face. "You think airing our dirty laundry will help? You think this is how we heal?" As the confrontation escalated, I realized that this was about more than just the podcast. It was about our marriage and the choices that had brought us to this point. I had used my pain as a shield, but in doing so, I had also stripped her of her dignity. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "I wanted to expose the truth, to find a way to heal. But I see now that I've hurt you in the process." Emily shook her head, her expression a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. "You've turned our lives into a spectacle, Jake. This isn't how you confront betrayal." As we navigated the raw emotions that filled the air, the listeners watched, captivated by the unfolding drama. But in that moment, I realized the true cost of my actions. The podcast, meant to be a cathartic release, had become a weapon that threatened to destroy what little was left of our relationship. After the episode ended, I sat in silence, my heart heavy with regret. The chat room continued to buzz with comments, but I felt detached from it all. Emily and I had become the subjects of a story that had spiraled out of control, and I knew I needed to take responsibility for my part in it. In the days that followed, Emily and I faced the fallout of that live episode. We began to have difficult conversations about trust, betrayal, and the choices that had led us down this painful path. The podcast, once a source of healing, now served as a constant reminder of our struggles. Slowly, we began to find common ground. Emily expressed her feelings of vulnerability, her fears about being exposed in such a public way. She reminded me that while I sought healing through storytelling, I had inadvertently put her in a position of shame. As we navigated our way through the turmoil, I learned the importance of balancing honesty with empathy. I had to confront my own pain without using it as a tool to hurt her. Through counseling and open communication, we slowly began to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Eventually, I decided to take a step back from the podcast. I realized that while it had started as a means of catharsis, it had become a source of division between us. I wanted to focus on healing our relationship, rather than airing our struggles for the world to hear. In the end, the experience forced us to face our demons and confront the raw truths of our marriage. As we rebuilt our lives together, I understood that healing would take time and effort, but it was a journey worth undertaking. Our story became a testament to resilience and the complexities of love, a narrative that no longer needed a public audience. Together, we found a way to navigate the shadows of betrayal and emerge stronger, committed to honesty and understanding as we face the future. And as we walked this path together, I knew that the lessons learned would forever shape the bond we shared, reminding us that love can endure even the darkest of storms.